let's talk about Rachel Khong's 2024 novel Real Americans. She titled it Real Americans, which means she really wants us to think about what it means to be an American and what it means to really be an American. Who gets to be called a real American? In this novel, our real Americans are May, who is the grandmother, and she is a scientist who immigrated from China. Her daughter Lily, who was brought up speaking only English, even though her parents are fully Chinese. And then we have the grandson, whose name is Nick, and he is the child of Lily and a very wealthy scion of a drug company called Meyer. So from the start, we get a sense in this book that real Americans are a blend of these different cultures and these different experiences. And the US has, I would argue, always been enriched by this influx of different ways of thinking and speaking and smelling and cooking and dressing. All of these ideas have come to make this a very rich culture. We're not a melting pot, really, because they don't quite melt, they stay. But they do make the US the place that so many of us, myself included, I immigrated from Venezuela in 1993, love to come to and see as a land of possibility. And for many of us, it is. However, as the book gets us to think, when you bring all of these different people together and then they have children and they blend with other people, you end up with these very deep cracks in your understanding of each other. So the US is also seen as like an individualistic culture, right? We have much more communal cultures in other places, and the US has a sense of individualism that fuels a lot of the drive to succeed. And part of what I think the novel is arguing is that some of that individualism comes from just how hard it is for these different generations who had such different pasts and upbringings to understand each other. And they're dying to. These family members love each other so much and they want to connect and they want to know, but they're hampered by just how different their upbringings, their racial identities, their language is. And all of those things is what makes the US such a rich place to live in, but also such a complicated place to thrive in and connect in. In Real Americans, Rachel Khong explores just how difficult it is for different generations, especially if they come from different cultures of the same family, to relate to each other. And she opens her book with Lily. Lily is in New York. It's 1999. She's an intern. She's struggling like most young grads do in New York City. And she's confused about not only what she wants to do with her life, but she's also confused about who she is because she looks completely Chinese. She is completely Chinese. But her parents, who are scientists, raised her to only speak English and eating American food. And they were very silent and secretive about their past. So she is brought up without any other family members, nobody else. It's just these two people who are speaking to her in a language that is not their own. Her mother always says, "I love you." And Lily can tell when her mother says it that it's the least natural thing in the world for her mother to say. And it makes Lily feel like her mother doesn't in fact love her, or like that the affection is hard to express for her. And it turns out later we learn that the mother loves her with all her being, but nobody told her they loved her when she was growing up. So it was hard for her to say it in a different tongue, but she felt like as an American, she needed to say it, unlike her parents who showed it. Her mother, May's mother, the grandmother, her mother showed her love. She didn't utter it, but she showed it. So we have this character who is quite at a loss as to who she is and what she wants, and she meets this dashing, handsome, kind, generous man. He's white, he's tall, he's blonde, he's blue-eyed. His name is Matthew, and they fall in love. And it's interesting because the novel at first just reads like a romance. You're like, oh, okay, we're reading this romance about these two people who are very quickly falling in love, and isn't that lovely? And oh my God, he has a lot of money. And as the novel evolves, we learn that he is also feeling a little bit like a fish out of water, because he comes from the Myers, who are a huge pharmaceutical family that has made all the money and created all the technology and so on and so forth. And he's very conflicted about his relationship with his own family. So we have these two people who feel completely out of place in their family. They don't know how to belong to the people they were born to, which then makes them not know how to belong to themselves. And these two people fall in love, and they have a lavish, fabulous wedding, and they have a baby, and it's all looking so good. And when the baby comes out, the baby looks just like him. She's Chinese, he's blonde and blue-eyed, and the baby comes out fully blonde and blue-eyed, which then leads her to make some discoveries about the science behind what the Myers had been doing, and also the science that her mother had been involved in. And this is how that section ends. It ends with our poor Lily with her newborn finding out something really terrifying about the families they both come from, and trying to make a choice about, are they going to just flee these families and start over, or what are they going to do? And what it does is that if we're thinking about real Americans, both of these characters, who are completely different, right? They have very different upbringings, are facing very similar challenges. And again, Khong is making the argument that at the end of the day, what makes an American real is not whether you're blonde and blue-eyed, or white or wealthy. It's this struggle between connecting and not connecting, and trying to understand where you stand in relation to those who came before you, many of whom are secretive and you don't really get them, and then to the people that you are building your own life with. The second section of the book follows Nick, who is the son of Lily and Matthew, and she jumps like 20 years, and you're like, what happened? But suddenly he's a teenager, and he lives in some little island in the state of Washington, and he has this Chinese mother. He looks completely white, but they're so tied together. And there's great mystery about who his father is, and she's very mysterious even about who her family are. It's this kid who doesn't look like his mother, but who desperately loves his mother, and she desperately loves him. They're really close. But he is finding himself suffocated by the smallness of where he lives, and by all these secrets that he is running around with, right? Where do I come from? Who am I? Why don't we look like each other? And in the story, he ends up eventually finding his father through DNA testing, and they tried to strike up a relationship, but just like his relationship with Lily is complicated by all these secrets and differences, it's really hard to understand why Matthew was not in his life, why he didn't seek him out. So we have this character that feels deeply isolated. And at first, of course, like I think most kids would, he's like, oh, my dad is awesome. My mom she lied to me, whatever. And then he realizes that his mom was not necessarily wrong in the choices that she made. But I think for this particular character we feel for him so hard, this sense of not looking like what you feel you are, but not knowing what in the world you are, because nobody will tell you, makes him very endearing, somebody we can really root for. And he is not only the center part of the story, but he's the one who ends up figuring out a way to bridge the gap between the two generations. And once again, as we navigate life in the US and try to understand what our ancestors are sometimes hiding from us or deeply just unable to explain to us because our background is so different from theirs, it sometimes skips a generation. It's easier to have a relationship with a grandparent because there's less remorse or resentment. Well, the rewords are kind of bad. Than it is to have a relationship with the parent who raised you, that you are so much closer to, you know them so well, but also they're responsible for a lot of what you see as pain in your life. Rachel Khong closes Real Americans with the story of May, who is the grandmother in the tale, and she has been very mysterious until now. She comes in the last section, and we have not understood this woman very well. But she comes, now it's 2030. We're in the future. Her grandson Matthew is a grown man, and she comes and finds him, and they talk, and she tells him her story. And it's a very difficult story, surprise, surprise, about growing up as a peasant in China and then living through the revolution and all the trauma she carries from having survived this very difficult time, the people she betrayed and left behind in order to get out, and the terrible weight of having left her homeland that was a complete mess when she left it, and having ended up with a man that she didn't really love that much, but he was her ticket out. And then you understand as you get her story why she didn't want her daughter Lily to know any of this. First, because it was horrible. And second, because she couldn't even explain it. It would be very hard to articulate to your young child as they're growing up all the pain and horror you went through. And it would be, I guess, pretty weird to articulate it when they're an adult. You're like, look, this is why I did the things I did. This is what I hid. That sounds even harder. But how do you tell your children about the horrible trauma you were carrying? And it also explains why she chose to only speak English to her daughter, because she wanted to protect her. She wanted her to be as American as she could be. But of course, as is always the case when we keep all these secrets, what she ends up doing is pushing her daughter away and keeping her daughter in this very complicated veil of secrecy and not knowing who she is, because as her mother is hiding her own past from her, and because Lily only had a father and a mother here, she had no other relatives, she finds herself not having any sense of who she is. She finds herself unmoored, and you'll have to read it to find out how they end up finding each other again, or if they do. But it is a tale about just how deep our love is. If there's one thing that crosses all cultures is that we love our children and we love our parents. We might not express it in the same way, and we might do things that don't make sense to our children or our parents over that love, but it is part of the foundation of American culture, this very complicated, multicultural, secretive, hard to understand love. I hope you've enjoyed this video about Rachel Khong's Real Americans and her exploration of all the ways in which our love and our immigration and our secrets make the US a particularly complicated yet promising and inspiring and transformational place to live in. And please let me know, have you read some of her work? Have you not? Do you have other immigrant novels that you like? What about family sagas? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Please let me know in the comments, and do share and subscribe, and go and read some fabulous fiction, this one or something else that makes you think and dream and feel absolutely transported by the magic of words.